There's kind of three doors as a founder entrepreneur. Door number one is keep running your business. Maybe you love your business, maybe you don't like your business. Door number two would be, at the right time, potentially sell the business, exit the business whenever, you either get a good multiple or the time is right or a good buyer or whatever. Door number three is where we really come in, which is like, this is a hopefully cash generating asset for you. And you need to think of, a lot of founders like to think of their business that way. Some of them, particularly people who like start their own company, it's their baby, it defines who they are. That's great. But if for any reason you're feeling angst or like you think someone can get, past 10 million when you've really struggled there, that's probably true. And so door number three is let's bring in somebody else, an operator, big O operator, to run the business, to own the P&L, to make strategic decisions, to hire, to fire, to do all the things that you probably don't really like anymore. You don't have to sell the business. You can actually get a bigger multiple later on by having a strong management team in place. If that is something you choose, you get your life back. You can be with your family. You can start another business. You can advise, invest, kind of do whatever you want.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, where every week we hear an amazing story from a serious founder who built a valuable software company and did it without big funding. This week, my guest is Ty Burke, the founder and principal of Search Partners. That's srchpartners.com. He's a recruiter. It started off at the big recruiting firm, but now he is specialized to helping software and tech founders who've grown businesses to 3, 5, 10, 20 million in revenue to hire their replacements, the operators, and eventually the CEO to take over for them. Don't sell your company, hire your replacement, somebody to run the company better than you. Ty and I have had plenty of conversations. I think this is a new possibility that isn't so obvious to founders out there, a new way to play this game. Don't sell your company, hire somebody to run it and double it, or, you get your life back. We talk about when is the right time to consider doing this, and should you consider doing this, what the process would look like, and what life looks like on the other side for founders who hire CEOs to replace their business or a serious operator to take over that stuff they don't like doing in the business. Stop me if you've heard this one before from founders. So it's a great conversation with Ty Burke. I know you'll enjoy this one. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, Ty. Good to see you.
Greg, it is awesome to see you once again. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Yeah, it's Friday afternoon. We're all dressed up. I'm in Park City, Utah, and you're not in your hometown of Denver. You're in somewhere in Mexico, all dressed up.
That's right. Valle de Bravo, Mexico. My crew moved down here about a year ago, and probably about 12 years ago, I told my wife I wanted to dress better. And she thought that she was like, she couldn't have been more excited. Little did she know, I was talking about buying a dozen tuxedo t-shirts, and that's kind of, I don't know, you just got to be ready for a party whenever you go anywhere.
Excellent. Well, it's a wonderful topic. You and I have had several conversations, and I met some of the founders you've worked with about something that nobody talks about in the growth game of the Practical Founder SaaS game. You grow it up and someday you get tired, or maybe you don't want to run a company with 100 or 200 employees and so forth. The usual thing is, I guess I got to sell this thing. But you help founders with another approach that works really well, which is, how about you find another CEO to run this thing and take it to the next level, and you either find a different role within the company, chairman or CTO, or you go spin up another business and get another CTO to run it or something like that. It's really fascinating. Solves a lot of problems for some of the founders I work with who have really are not excited about running a very big business, but don't want to sell it to PE. So I'm really excited to talk about replacing yourself as the CEO intentionally, and delegating the CEO job to somebody else is a really a curious thing. It's a great topic. Yeah.
The way that we kind of phrase this is, or the way that we position this rather, I should say, is, there's kind of three doors as a founder entrepreneur. Door number one is keep running your business, and maybe you love your business, maybe you don't like your business, maybe you don't like your business.
Yeah.
Door number two would be, at the right time, potentially sell the business, exit the business whenever, you either get a good multiple or the time is right or a good buyer or whatever. Door number three is where we really come in, which is like, this is a hopefully cash generating asset for you. And you need to think of, a lot of founders like to think of their business that way. Some of them, particularly people who like start their own company, it's their baby, it defines who they are.
Yeah.
That's great. But if for any reason you're feeling angst or like you think someone can get, past 10 million when you've really struggled there, that's probably true. And so door number 3 is let's bring in somebody else, an operator, big O operator, to run the business, to own the P&L, to make strategic decisions, to hire, to fire, to do all the things that you probably don't really like anymore. You don't have to sell the business. You can actually get a bigger multiple later on by having a strong
Yes.
management team in place, if that is something you choose, and you get your life back. You can be with your family. You can start another business. You can advise, invest, kind of do whatever you want.
Okay. Well, tell us about your firm. You're a recruiter, a hotshot specialist boutique recruiter. Work with big search, agencies, and now you specialize on this for these, these tech software founders here. Tell us about what you're doing these days at Search Partners.
Yeah, we run executive searches for typically companies in kind of like 5 to 50 million sort of revenue, top line revenue
Yeah.
mark. So call it lower end of the market. And what this means is we will work with founders, typically founders, owners of companies who realize that door number 3 is kind of the route that they want to go down. And we will work with them to go out and go find this person. We'll work with them to put together a very specific strategy around what this person will look like, their experience, things that they have done. They've expanded internationally, they've whatever. And we'll put together the strategy. We'll go out and we'll find those people. We'll interview those people. We'll then bring them to the founder and say, this is Joan, this is Jean, this is Jane, this is John. I just came up with that on the spot. I think I
Yeah,
might
that's
do that
pretty good.
again.
Juan.
Uh,
Yeah.
and we will help recruit and hire killer executives. Most of the time, it's what I would call like the operator, the big O operator. So someone who's going to have full P&L control of the business. Call it a general manager, a president, a CEO. That's the core of what we do is really help founders kind of get their lives back a lot of times after they've got something that's a sustainable business, it's a nice business, but they just don't care about it as much as they used to. And so, yeah, we've been in business for a little over 5 years now. We're in year 6. I'm very proud of that. We've got an amazing team of 6 people around North America. And yeah, we're doing some really good work today.
And how many searches or, these operators have you recruited and plugged into the companies that you work with, your clients?
We've done I think we about 75 searches.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
we've been in business a couple of years now, and it's anywhere
Yeah.
between like 15 and 24 searches that we'll run per year. It's very boutique, very project level. A search takes on average 74 business days, so call it 3 months. And it's a very thorough process that people who are truly committed to like making this big change for themselves and for their
Yeah.
business and for their employees and their customers. Yeah, we really do a good job working with these people who are like really willing to make this commitment. A lot of founders, in my opinion, sometimes they hear about this notion of hiring an operator. They'll hear about it on Twitter or at an event or something, and it sounds good to them, but there's always a but, right? Well, but it's going to cost too much, but it's going to take too long, but I might not like them, and those are all things that we deal with all the time. However, those who are truly committed to making this change often see exceptional results.
Okay, great. And what did you do before this that got you to this particular, recruiting challenge for a particular kind of company in a particular situation?
Yeah, it's like, how the hell did you end up doing this? Did you go
No,
to college?
that's awesome. But like, how did you get here? Like, were
Yeah,
you a
I
founder and you did it, or yeah,
I worked for a large search firm, a large executive recruiting firm for about 9 years,
yeah,
and I learned a lot, everything, not everything, a lot of what I know today from there. And it was during COVID. I had the itch. I was pushing my kids in the middle of the day. They should have been at school. They were at home, and I was pushing my kids on the swing. That's what this motion is, pushing my kids around. And I just started thinking I could be doing this better. I could
yeah,
be doing this better than we're doing it now.
yeah.
And I want to take a chance on myself. That was the real itch, was like, I'm pretty sure we can do this better. And if I die tomorrow, then I'll be bummed that I never took a chance on myself.
But you
And
did, let's say, all kinds of executive recruiting for all kinds of companies. How did you see this particular opportunity, right? Which isn't even so obvious to founders out there, that
yeah,
this is the thing.
Right, right. Well, like a lot of things in life, it kind of fell into me. When I started the business, I had plans for the markets I wanted to serve, the expertise that I knew I had. And, candidly, a stroke of luck happened. A good friend of mine is a guy named Sam Parr, and he was looking for a CEO to run his business. And he said, "Can you help me find a CEO?" And I said, "Do you want to be my first client?" And we crushed that. We got him an amazing person. He ended up selling that business, and that kind of was really the beginning of what has now become this very founder-focused service that we provide, and since then, it's been a lot of word-of-mouth referrals, a lot of repeat clients, and there's just this niche. There's so many entrepreneurs, all the people who are listening to this, watching this, like, there are thousands and thousands of them, but, like, 40 years ago, there weren't nearly as many entrepreneurs, and so as
Yes.
that, like, sort of market has grown, the need for founders to find successors for themselves has dramatically increased. That demand has dramatically increased. And so this is just where I, personally, I love working with founders directly and having that sort of access, because these are really, really smart people making, doing really, really cool stuff. This is the market that we've been able to carve out. It's been really nice.
And do you serve, I mean, this is part of the private equity playbook. You sell your company and you run it for a little while and you get tired or you don't want to put up with their rigmarole and they say, okay, uncle, please hire somebody to replace me. Buy and hold, private equity, they'll buy your company and you can run it or they'll find somebody. They know the scale playbook, scale CEO operator playbook. That's part of the game. We'll take it from here kind of thing. And it usually works, right? And not always, but it usually works. This is kind of part of the PE playbook that founders could run themselves, right? So, do you serve private equity investors that say, we bought this thing and the founder isn't a good fit and we want to, can you help us find a new CEO? All that?
That was, one of our, I don't know, one of the types of clientele that really put us on the map. We did a bunch of work with what was then a private equity sort of holdco. It's now a publicly
Yeah.
traded company, where an investor would buy a company, and it was a
Is
great
that like
business.
Tiny or something? That's not public?
Exactly, Tiny.
Okay. Yeah.
Tiny was the name of the
Yeah.
company. Yeah, so you're
Okay.
familiar,
Great.
obviously. So we've probably placed, I don't know, 15 or 20 CEOs, leaders at
Oh, wow.
at tiny companies. Yeah, so that was amazing
Right.
for
Yeah, and
where
Andrew's very deliberate about finding the CEOs. I've heard him talk about this. It's not a random thing. It's not a gut feel. It's kind of the most important decision after buying a company or even before buying a company. So I get it. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking about the decision to go take this approach, right? Or consider it and the process of recruiting and, that magical, treacherous challenge of hiring somebody to replace yourself and what happens in the transition and afterwards, right? What happens to founders? There's probably a little bit of that head game change, like when we sell our companies and somebody else is running it, we kind of freak out and, it's a little different thing there, but all of that. So you ready to expose this and go into some details?
yeah, absolutely. There's so many entrepreneurs building cool businesses, and so many of them are, there's peer-to-peer membership groups, there's talking
Yes.
heads on all the media channels, but this is a very, very sensitive topic for people who may not love their business anymore, but they
Yeah.
don't necessarily know who to turn to or trust, who to trust. And so hopefully this can be very helpful for that type of
Okay,
person.
so let's start with that. Like the decision to hire a replacement CEO or an operator president to do the day to day. I don't know if we call it COO these days. That's another term that gets run around. Some people, I can think of a few things. They're the inventor, fast mover. You like to do new things,
Yeah.
and then once the factory starts, they just want to die because they're the inventor and they want somebody else to run it. And another one is I've been doing this so long, I keep trying to scale and it's not really working. Maybe it's me, they realize. Maybe I'm the starter and not the scaler. I've seen that one. And and presumably the scalers that you work with, the operators, are not the starter from a cold start, right? They're the growers, right, of a more complex machine or something. Maybe I'm tired of this thing, right? Or I'm tired, or there's a
Or
health issue or some other all those kind of things that pop up,
or I
right?
want to focus on my family. Last year we had two women founders who wanted to have children, wanted to start a family. and we helped recruit executives for them
There
to
you
kind of
go.
take over the day to day. And both of them welcome their first children into the world this 2025. But
Wow.
yeah, that's like a different thing you wouldn't necessarily think about, and it may be a little
Yeah.
bit different for women or men, but obviously having a family, growing a family is something that once you've started a business and it's cash flowing nicely and you think about like the next kind of personal milestone, because your startup is taking up 70 hours of your week, and then you realize, oh God, there's bigger things in life to that. That's also been, an area where we tend to get a lot of requests.
Okay, there you go. I can think of one more as well, that founders build a business around their, let's say, their personality, their values, their opinions, their view of the world, right? And they get a tribe of people and their business is opinionated. They do it in a certain way, like mine is. And they grow it towards 20 million and say, maybe I don't want to run this thing, but if I put it on the private equity pile, sell it to private equity in multiple bites or whatever, the charm, the magic that we have, our unique approach is probably going to get lost. And I don't want to do that. So that's another one that I hear. It's a little conundrum for
And it's
founders.
also some founders, I would say like the founder who's thinking about this hire versus the investor who's thinking about this hire, they're going to take different approaches. But the founder, like this is part of their
Yeah.
identity, right?
Yes,
Started
of
this thing
course.
in my garage with whatever I bootstrapped
Yes.
it, like whatever, I've done everything, and everybody starts to get to know you as the whatever guy or the whatever gal, and giving somebody else the keys to that kingdom can be quite daunting. It's a
Yeah.
very, very difficult emotional detachment, even though it's right, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind
Yeah.
of another wrinkle that sometimes we have to work
Well,
through.
let's talk about that. Like somebody says, I want to do this, Ty. How do you, what are the kind of things you have to go through to qualify them? Like, are you really want to do this? Right. Are
Yeah,
you,
it's
how do you judge that?
I would say everybody has their own inflection point, and it's just like totally customized to the
Yes.
founder. Okay, so it's
Yeah.
not like one
Mhm.
size fits all, but it's not about company size, employees, revenue, multiple. It's not about any things like that. It's about founder readiness, and also probably like business economics as well. So kind of what I've learned from being in business now for almost 6 years is that like when the founder can very clearly articulate what hiring an operator would unlock for them personally, not just for the
Ah,
business, but for them personally, that tends to yield really good outcomes. If you say, if somebody says, "I'm looking to hire somebody to take more stuff off my plate so that I can do X," that's fine. But the more specific that person can be, as if to say, like, "I want to get out of this business altogether," or I want to start a new business. These can often be kind of like the reasons when somebody's ready to hire. The businesses. You also have to think about again the economics of it, like depending on the size of the business you've got, you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to pay for this person, and that's gonna
salary,
cost.
compensation, equity compensation,
Yeah.
all that. Yeah.
So if you can, your business needs to be able to generate enough profit to support a 3, 4, $500,000, total comp for a CEO. If you're only doing a million or two, and you want this person, then maybe it's 1 or 200,000, but you're probably not going to get somebody that good.
Yeah.
So that's it. Like the founder needs to be mentally ready. The business needs to be able to support this. And you're kind of thinking like, I'm too good at starting businesses. I want to do,
Yeah.
maybe 0 to 1 stuff. And I don't want to be stuck running this one. That tends to be when there's the big unlock of let's do something
Okay.
else.
Yeah. Well, I hear this a lot right now. The founders that have been 5, 6, 7, 10 years in a B2B SaaS business, and it was started before AI, and now their brains are all around AI, and they're weighing, I want to go play over here, right? And this could be one of those things there. What's kind of a minimum level of revenue or growth rate or profit? I mean, there's ranges there, but it's more likely to be like 5 million plus, you said?
I tend to think so. We've worked with a couple of companies that are smaller than that. And those sorts of companies that are doing 2 or 3 million, they kind of need to have been in the market for a couple of years. I want to make sure that that CEO we bring in here is like able to scale something that is there. If this business is doing a couple million and they're 18 months old, well,
Yeah.
my guess is they're probably relying on AI to get it where they are, and
Yeah.
It'd be very
Or
exciting.
the
And
founder magic tricks or something like that. I mean, it's the same reasons that acquirers wait till it's a larger 5, 10 million. It's not a founder connected to every single process in the company every day,
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Interesting.
And I think also like, if I were to put it into kind of tiers, you're
Mhm.
doing 3 to 5 million, let's say, like you could probably afford like a really good VP, maybe like, maybe like a GM sort of operator.
Mhm.
You're doing 5 to 10 million. You could probably afford like a really good CEO. Again, depending on the
Yeah.
model for
Yeah.
SaaS, hopefully you're quite profitable. But if you're doing like 10 plus, that's when you can get really competitive with what your offer is going to be for a CEO in terms of like multiple components of the compensation and being able to like really attract people who you will eventually pay, a lot of money to help scale it.
And it'll be worth it. Like, holy cow, I got my life and this thing keeps growing and I get to, the multiples keep going. The best ROI, I tell founders, the best ROI is to double the revenue of your business, and it's the same rule of 40, 50, 70, whatever it is, right? And it's worth twice as much or a multiple, the multiples go up as you get bigger. You might as well kind of thing. So,
One of our clients at one point was trying to sell. He was doing just shy of 10 million. It was an e-commerce business. He wasn't going to get that good of a multiple. Instead, I think he was going to get like 3x or something. And instead, he hired a CEO, and this guy tripled the business himself in just about 2 years. I mean, caught lightning in a bottle with a couple things, but now they're looking at, I think it's like a 4x multiple on a much bigger number, and he's
yes, right. You're a
walking away
bigger
with
company.
significantly bigger liquidity than he would have otherwise.
You've had enough of these. Some of them have like the profitable business that'll keep running and the founder takes the profits and, gives some incentive to the CEO and like, let's double the business and double the profits and I don't have to do it. Like that's one way to do it. Another would be just to keep investing and growing and we'll sell it for, we'll grow the business 2 or 3 times and sell it, right? And we'll both make out on that one. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and that's the
'Cause that's
name of the game. Like there are just people out there who care, like, who are just really good at taking something that works and is
okay.
working and making it better, and they wanna make they wanna make a lot of money on the back end of it, and,
Yeah.
uh
Okay, so let's talk about the other side. This is a two-sided market, right? You got founders that have some kind of dream or desire and, change, that they wanna put into action. What's on the other side of this? Is there a bunch of former operators, former founders themselves? I don't know. These people that say, gosh, I know these founders are starting these great businesses with all their magic. And then they get tired when it gets big, 5 or 10 billion. But that's when I, love the game and I could take it to 50 million. I've done the founder to 5 to 50, kind of game myself. They're very different sports. Who's out there that is available, right?
My answer has sort of changed over the last couple of years. There are so many people. To me, I see these
Yeah,
people
yeah,
all the time. I'm in the business, obviously,
yeah,
where they can take a SaaS business, they can take an e-com business, they can take an info product business, they can take a kind of a whatever business. They're really good general managers,
yeah.
and all they want to do is go from 1 to 10. And they've done this 2 or 3 times before.
Uh-huh.
And one thing that's really interesting, I typically work with smaller companies who
Hmm.
are looking to make a big splash, and I love that. But one thing that I find is really interesting is often the best operators who are going to scale your 10 or $15 million business maybe not directly, but they've got a background early in their career at General Electric or Procter and
Oh,
Gamble or
oh,
Nestle
interesting.
or Unilever, like these big boring companies that have been around for ages. Well, they're very good at developing rotational programs. They see high potential 23, 24-year-olds. They're gonna put them in programs like, do 18
Yeah,
months here, go to, Belgium for a year, do this for a year, run procurement for a year, and they, like, develop these leaders internally for the first 5, 10, 15 years of their career. Eventually, those people are gonna go somewhere else, gonna do other things, but they have this, like, really, really strong training ground, and
yeah.
these people become just the best operators. Like,
Oh,
it's just this trend I've noticed. Of course, every search that we run is different, and you may want someone who's, purely done fintech SaaS, to take over for you. That's
yeah, yeah.
fine. But it's these kind of legacy companies just really churn out these wonderfully well-rounded operators. So the people are definitely out there if you know where to look.
Yeah, and some segment of them wanna go all the way to these little guys and just run something, right? They got all this energy to go build a machine, this massive machine, and, use that muscle on something that can grow it and scale it, and,
But you got to be careful. You got to be careful
okay, yeah.
because if you bring it, if you're doing 10 million and you bring in a woman who was running $100 million P&L for
Yes.
Procter and Gamble, guess what? She's going to be used to the resources. She's going to be used to the brand. She's going to
Of
be
course.
used to the politics, the bureaucracy of a larger company. So we try to, ideally, I'm not going to recruit anybody directly out of these big companies.
Yeah.
I would like to see a couple of wins in between
Yeah.
then and
Okay.
now, a couple of startups, maybe some smaller companies to know that like they have to be a lot scrappier than Nestle might afford them to be, for
Yeah,
instance.
right, and proof of that scrappiness, kind of thing. So, that's interesting. Do you see, like, just in you deal with both sides of this, like, there's the founder personality, and then there's the operator? Like, you talk to people and you have a sixth sense for each side and what's a good match, in this particular chemistry, right? Is that the way you see the world, right? You're kind of grading them on their, operator savvy or,
Yeah, yeah. We get a lot of active job seekers who come to us.
okay.
We don't make money off these people, so
Yeah, okay.
we have to be selective. But I really like to take these calls because I get to know people kind of hair down in a more relaxed environment, understand kind of what's going to make them tick. And I take crazy amounts of notes. And every time we start a new search, in fact, 3 of our projects from 2025, the person that we hired was somebody that I had just met. Like I didn't go out and I mean, when we start a
Yeah.
project, we're going to look for people who've got A, B, C, D, and E. And we're going to go headhunt. We're going to cold call. We're going to network.
Well,
But also, we're going to open up our own network. And so 3 different placements we made last year were just from conversations I'd had with people over the years. And so really what I think that the business model, certainly the market and the type of founder you are will afford you different types of people. So like if you're a risk-taking sort of CEO or founder, I should say, are you going to want to hire a risk-taking sort of operator? Conversely, if you're, slow and steady, let's grow 5 to 10% every year. And if that's all you want to do, then that's probably the type of person you may want to succeed you. So there's kind of like little idiosyncrasies
yeah, of
that
course.
come up with people's personalities that we're always paying attention to because like at the end of the day, we could find candidate A who's got a killer resume and candidate B who's got a decent resume, but if candidate B just jibes with the founder, like that is what, a big thing that we always talk about is like, would you trust this person? A founder is trying to make a hire and there's a tough decision between 2 or 3 people. It's like, who'd you trust to watch your kids? Who'd you trust to babysit your kids? It's kind of a weird, different sphere, but like that's the sort of person you want to be able to go into battle with. I do think there's an element of like gut and rapport and connection that goes into hiring these people.
Yeah, and the odd chemistry of this game, right? On both sides that has to work there. Let's talk about, okay, so a founder says, "Okay, I've thought about it, I've considered it, I kinda wanna move forward. It's a $10 million SaaS company. I want a CEO can run it. I wanna go play with something else, and this thing could be 30, but it's just not me. I don't wanna sell it right now. Let's go hire a CEO." How do you what's your process? What generally goes on there?
Yeah. So I've got a small team. My team and I will kind of kick this thing off and we will put together a strategy. Now, there's a number of things that kind of are important to consider. We put in 1-year guarantees for our placements. Okay. So
Okay.
if, Greg hires us to find him a COO and we hire that person and he's not in the seat for any reason for, you fire him or he leaves or whatever, we'll redo that search for free. And we've had
Yeah.
to do that less than 1% of the time. So it's really, really important for an earlier stage company to find a cornerstone they can build upon and somebody who's going to stick around with them, kind of through thick and thin. We also only are going to present people that, we interview people very, very detailed. And we're only going to present people that we would want to hire them ourselves and we would
Yeah.
want to work with themselves. In fact, a lot of times, like we'll say, you may not be ready to hire a CEO yet, but we'll map out kind of what success looks like. And, for us, this is strategy, aggressive headhunting. Okay. We don't post jobs. I've never posted a job in my life. I wouldn't even know how to do it. We
It's very
don't.
curated, you would say. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So basically, like we reverse engineer the process. So if you're running a $5 million plugin for whatever company, and you think it could be a $12 to $15 million plugin company, we're going to go find out all the people who've been number one, maybe number two, depending on the function. If you need a growth person or a finance person, kind of background, we're going to go find all the people who've done that before in the last couple of years. We're going to reach out to them. We're going to interview them. So like the idea is like, when we're hiring somebody, let's buy their expertise to benefit our company. They're going to understand where to invest in paid media at 5 million versus 10 million. They're going to you're
Yeah.
going to understand when it makes sense to offshore. They're going to understand where the landmines are at kind of the 5, 10, 20, whatever million mark. And so the idea is kind of again
Like a been there, done that. Like they've been through this next phase or two, right?
yeah.
Next couple turns. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. One of our clients wanted to grow their $15 million SaaS brand to 50 over 5 years' time. This was a profitable company already. And the trick was like they wanted to maintain margins while, creating some new products and just kind of like eating market share. And so what we did was we spent a couple of weeks focusing, like really doing hardcore research. This is research that like, ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, they can't quite
Yeah.
nail it yet. Maybe they will in the future. Hopefully it'll make our jobs easier. But like finding companies, bootstrapped companies that had grown from 50 to 50 over the last couple of years in a very specialized niche, like this company we're working with, found the operators who led it, and then we went after them directly.
This podcast is brought to you by my friends at Designly. If you're a non-technical founder with an up and running SaaS business, but your first product and dev partner aren't keeping up, it's time to check out Designly. Designly understands the pains you're experiencing right now. Dev leaders who speak in jargon and put you off, MVPs that went live and face technical problems and UX issues, and missed expectations all around. Designly's mission is to help non-technical software founders build great products with clarity, confidence, and peace of mind by serving as your fully outsourced engineering team. Designly becomes your trusted product partner, working with you every week as your dedicated team. They have partnered with over 200 non-technical and practical founders in the last 12 years. Designly knows how to turn that crazy product stress into calm and successful software launches. Check out their success stories from founders like you who've been there. It all starts with a free 1-week audit where they review your product's code, design, and roadmap to uncover what's working, what's broken, and what's next. Check out designly.co/practical. That's designli.co/practical to talk to them and see how they can help you move faster and sleep better. Okay. Now, is there, I don't know, there's the objective side. Well, they need to have these skills and they need to have this experience and so forth. And then there's the subjective side, the chemistry, the personality, the culture, the values, right? That, presumably have to be a match. Maybe they're just as important or one comes before the other. How do you think about, that whole matrix
Yeah.
of matching?
There's a lot of nuance that goes into the interview. So for instance, I'm trying to identify patterns. We want builders versus, I don't know, tourists, let's say. Okay. So builders, I gush when I talk to these people. I just gush. I'm like, oh, I love that you've been at this company for 6 years. And then your previous company is 8 years. And before that, you were 7 years. Like builders stick around when
Yes.
good times are good and times are bad. That tells me, number one, they're loyal as hell. That's what we want. We want someone that, again, a cornerstone we can build upon. It also tells me, number two, the owners of whoever ran that company also equally valued that person, right? They didn't
Mhm.
let them go when COVID happened, or they didn't let them go when they had a bad quarter, right?
Yeah.
So we look for trends there. People who've really like stayed at a company long enough to see decisions play out. But like when we see people who've got 18 months here, a year here, 6 months here, 2 years here, you just start to wonder that the patterns start to kind of emerge.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The second thing that we do is we really intently listen to what pronouns they use.
Mm.
So when people Greg, tell me about how you grew this business, how you
Yeah.
expanded into Canada. And if they say, well, I decided that we were going to hire a general manager to run Canada, or I decided that we were going to kind of eat the taxes or whatever, that's one answer. What I would prefer to hear is, well, the leadership team sat down and together we decided that X was going to be the best route forward. And, I got to give credit to my marketing director.
Yeah.
Like she absolutely killed it, right? So just the
Right.
way people answer questions, if it's I and it's me, we want people to tell us about their successes. Like that's what an interview is. We want people to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
like, but also be humble enough to recognize they're just one part of one piece of the puzzle here, because ultimately, like that's going to be a kind of a, I don't know, a predictor of how they will interact
Mhm.
with your team in the future.
Do you use tests of the founder and their superpowers and strengths and weaknesses and, the operator to understand what they really are out there, or is it all
Yeah.
done with your process? Yeah.
No, there's 1,000. There's 88 tests actually. Is what I heard most recently. There's 88 different assessment tests. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, someone's got to consolidate this market. So like, because
Yeah.
there's different sorts of assessments. There's
Yeah. Do you use any of them, like, in your work, or?
we use a handful of them. Most of the times, what we end up using are the assessments that the company might already be using. They might have familiar with.
Okay, yeah, right.
So, like,
Okay.
DISC assessments is a big
Right.
one.
Mhm.
Predictive index, BRIC is one. The Enneagram is also one
Yes,
kind of
okay.
interesting. So, and I think that a lot of these are supplemental, right? You're like trying to figure out who you're buying, who you're hiring here,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
how you can be set up for success working alongside this person.
Okay. What about the values game, right? Maybe the founder values have turned into the culture of the company that's, formal or informal or otherwise. Do you wanna match the values of the new operator to the old company, or is that an opportunity to evolve it, or how do you play that chemistry game?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. We want somebody who wants and craves autonomy. Okay. Meaning we want to bring in somebody who's willing to make decisions, hard decisions. And, the founder may have been reluctant to let go their director of
No.
FP&A because
Yeah.
they went to college together.
Yes, of
The
course.
operator, they're not going to give a shit. They're going to be like, okay, well, that person's losing money for us and we have to move on.
Yeah,
And so, the question about values hiring is definitely important, but you have to take it with a grain of salt because you're making this decision as a founder to relinquish autonomy. Yeah, so values-based hiring is important. Like the founder and the operator need to certainly agree on what's going to be important for the company, but I think that the founder has to respect that the operator is going to do things their own way.
yeah,
And there has to be this understanding from the founder that they're making this decision to hire this person who may do things differently than the founder did, and they're doing it for the right reasons, right? They're doing it
right.
to grow the company. They're doing it to make it a better place to work. There's like a bit of a push and a pull there that sometimes, sacrifices have to be made depending on what that value might be. But again, it's just got like, it's the founder has got to trust that they're making the right decision, even if, maybe the operator's values may slightly different from their own.
Okay, so there's gotta be agreement about the vision, the goal, what we're trying to do, the handoff, the responsibility, right? And, the delegation. And like you would when you hire somebody, you don't wanna do their job, hire somebody and then do their job, right? You're giving them the autonomy. And you're presumably creating an incentive for them that says you have a salary and an incentive compensation and some equity that if you get to this place, right, you kind of guide them by the goal, presumably, like, you hire experienced adults who will, take charge and head in that direction, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, um, the compensation piece is a very
Let's talk
thorny
about that.
one in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Let's
mean,
talk about compensation,
everyone
whether
wants to talk
it's
about comp. Let's
salary,
talk about comp.
incentive,
I love it.
equity. I'm sure it's all over the place, but
Yeah,
I don't know what should, presumably a serious operator that says, I will take responsibility for all the hard things. I'll do the long term. I'll get it from here to there. I'll do my best and I'll be sensitive to the founder and so forth. And I've got an incentive in this. Presumably, they want to be paid a real compensation salary and have incentives for the milestones along the way and get a piece of equity to win a prize when the value is created, right?
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. That's important. What you just said, that the value is created. So depending on the cap table, depending on the structure of if you've raised venture, if you're PE, if you're bootstrapped, whatever,
Yes.
that's probably going to play a big part in how you can
Yeah.
structure the comp. Now, one of the things that we've really noticed lately is some founders just straight up don't want to give up any equity. That's okay. But a lot of CEOs don't either. And I think a lot of CEOs, particularly those who came from a VC environment where they had, all this equity that is, never materialized or never became liquid, they feel like they may have gotten burned. And so we've seen this a
So
lot.
they grabbed the equity upside and didn't really get the compensation, and then didn't really plan out, and they got squeezed out. So yes, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I,
So
I
one of
see
the
that in executive hires in bootstrap land. Some people say, I just want to pay great compensation, and every year, let's do this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but you still got to incentivize the hell out of this person. So what we see, probably one in two offers that are made are kind of like a profit share, where the CEO is going to get X percentage of profits above a certain baseline. Okay.
Yeah.
So if your EBITDA is 2 every year, that's the baseline upon which everything else should be
Mhm.
measured. And so, like, this is going to help align incentives without actually giving away any ownership. This person's going to see like actual liquid, distributions quarterly or
Yeah.
annually
Uh-huh.
that they can do something with themselves instead of potentially hoping for this buyer to come along and make
Yeah.
them rich one day.
So that's
Um,
a more, let's say, profit-oriented business that's up and running and is efficient and isn't being, profits are not being pushed into invest to grow faster, right? Which is a decision. What about the ones that are growing fast or they are less profitable, right? Presumably there's a story that says we'd like to double or triple this and, you know, we know there'll be people waiting on the other side who want to buy this and you can participate in that. I don't know. Are they getting 10%, 20% of the equity with vesting and things like that?
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the largest percentage we've seen in any offer is 18%.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
like an accelerated 18%. So it's like, maybe 10% or, 5 or 8 or something or 10. And then if milestones are achieved, that could trigger 12 or that could trigger 16 or 18. So
Yeah. Okay.
it goes up higher, but again, it's all based on performance. Another thing we also see all the time is transaction bonuses. Like really savvy
Yes.
CEOs will come and negotiate and they'll say like,
If we
cool.
sell
This
for
all
X,
this
if we,
all
yeah.
sounds good. Give me a percentage of the actual transaction value, should that happen.
That's what I would
And
do. Yeah.
and
Right.
and we see phantom equity, and if it's a public
Yeah.
company, there's options, and there's a bunch of different ways to kind of skin this cat. But again, I like to go back to however you're thinking about incentivizing this person long term. Let's say it's a hold. Okay, let's say you're just cash flowing this
Yeah.
thing and you hire Jerry when it's a $20 million valuation, and 5 years later it's 100. Well, Jerry should be compensated for
Yeah.
something.
Uh-huh.
I believe he's
Yeah.
so in that case, Jerry's equity stake, you just buy it back by the time he's done, and Jerry then reaps the benefits of that growth. But it's all based on the baseline. If you're already doing X, then you can't give this person compensation based on the total number. You can only
Yeah.
give this person comp based on the percentage of growth beyond that baseline.
Yeah, that's great. In this, allow like we're talking turkey, with real candidates and real compensation and real impending change. What founder, whatever, freak out or what founder therapy do you have to do to say, no, that's a reasonable compensation. No, you got to be ready for a delegation and things might change a little. No, you got to be hands off. What are common, therapy interventions you have with founder? I mean, just to get, both sides organized here on a good foundation.
Yeah. Okay, first off, you said talking turkey, which I say all the time,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
people look at me like I'm 85 years old. I think it's like a
Yeah.
a phrase that is, maybe not as used as much. So I very much appreciate that, Craig. The second part is we let the market help, the founder understand what it's going to cost for this
Ah,
person. Very v
this guy
very
at this
rarely
rate, this gal at this rate, et cetera. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
rarely is it, "Hey, Ty, we're gonna find a CEO. I'm paying them 300, not a buck less, not a buck more."
Yeah.
95%
See
of the
what we
time,
get.
it's, "Let's go find someone who's got A, B, and C. Let's kinda figure out how much they're gonna cost, what they're gonna be interested in. Do they need more cash? Do they need more back end?
Yeah.
What's gonna be important to them?" And then throughout the process, they're gonna interview 9.8 people. They're gonna interview 10 people. We're gonna interview about 30 people, and we have all that data. All 30 people are gonna kinda roughly tell us what their expectations are. Of
Yes.
course, the rules have changed a little bit. I can't ask what people make. Oftentimes, they share it with me just because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
know it's easier. But we've got all this data to say, like, look, based on what we're looking for, based on the size of your company and all these other people, we think an offer somewhere like, 300 base and a 50% bonus and then some sort of long-term equity play could really get it done. And we have that conversation with these people.
Yeah.
That's the other part of that why I like working directly with founders. A founder's going to interview someone,
And
they're
then
going to be like,
why they like working with you is because you're creating a market and you're seeing what is the precedent and the standard, and you're helping negotiate both sides and they're not negotiating, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
creating a fair
But
discussion.
but it also comes back to trust. Okay, so like we've got Chris is the guy we want to hire. Chris and Sandy, she wants to hire Chris, and Chris wants the job, and Sandy wants Chris, and everyone wants each other. And then the Sandy and Chris have to have an honest conversation about like what it's actually going to look like, what's actually attainable, what's a stretch goal, and that goes so far when it comes to building rapport between your operator and you to make sure you have shared goals, you're aligned on the vision, you're aligned on what it's going to look like once you get there. And that's just like, that's just such a different way to make an offer and way to onboard somebody versus like, here's what I'm offering you, take it or leave it.
How much time does Sandy, and I forget the other word here, how much time does the founder and the new operator spend in discussions about what is the company and getting to know each other and what have you done and what are the goals and vision and getting it to whiteboard together and so forth? How much time do they have to spend to be comfortable?
Yeah, usually like 5 to 7 hours.
Yeah.
Throughout the interview, the courting process, as it were,
Yeah.
it's somewhere in there. And
Do they
you
have
know,
to
qu-
meet in person in the modern era, presumably fly out and, you know,
probably
have
50%
dinner
of
and
the
all?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably 75% of the time that happens.
Okay. Yeah.
It just kind of depends. If you got 30 people and everybody's remote and you're comfortable doing it remote, then that's okay.
Okay. All right.
But at this level, like we usually want to try to get people to have a dinner or get a cup of coffee
Yeah.
or just hang out and see the whites of each other's eyes in real life.
Right. All right. Let's talk about, okay, there's a handshake. There's I guess a contract, an employment contract, and it'd be with compensation and upsides and everything. What happens after? You have to announce it to the team. The founder has to change their role. I don't know. There's all forms of that when you sell your company and you walk away. You're not in total control anymore, and things like that are very jarring. But like, what's the mechanics once that's in an agreement's in place?
You think about the subsequent year after this person starts, and I kind of break it down into like 3
Okay.
phases, more or less. The first phase is kind of like this shadow phase. The first, I don't know, 2, 3 months, heavy onboarding. The founder is really going to be still going to be involved in a lot of things, but like intentionally stepping back, kind
Yeah.
of available for questions, but not really making decisions. This is like really, really hard for some people to make. So, to like let go and let someone else make these big decisions. you're introducing the CEO to really important customers, really important vendors, and you might have, weekly meetings or whatever. The second
But
phase,
they're already taking over their team and the meetings and the metrics and like and the goals and the mechanics and
oh yeah,
decisions and
oh yeah,
hiring and firing, right, is happening, right? Yeah.
the faster you can let go of control as the founder, the quicker you're going to be, the faster your life is going to be improved.
Yeah, you're gonna
But
get your result. Yeah.
if yeah,
Yeah.
like, and it's not always going to be, perfect, smooth sailing. The first couple
Yeah,
of
yeah,
weeks,
yeah.
there may be a couple of rough things that happen, right? But you made this decision for a reason. And then, by the time a couple of months roll around, you're starting to see that, you as the founder, like, you're not focused on day-to-day tasks. You're not even running weekly meetings. Maybe you're giving this company 10 hours a week and you're thinking more about, like, how do I get on podcasts? How do I get on
Yeah, yeah,
stage? How do I,
yeah.
build this, other thing? And so it becomes more of like a support mechanism after really doing a lot of like heavier hand holding in the first couple of weeks.
And does that
Um,
mean a new title? Meaning, I know Daryl Paul was on the podcast, hired a CEO for the business that he and his wife ran for 15 years, and he's sure they're both, chairpersons, right? And they have a CEO, right? And so it's more of a board kind of thing and, visit the office and with all their friends and, the relationships. But when people come to them with a problem, they always put it back, to the CEO, but it's a chairman kind of thing. Now, is that pretty typical or what do you see?
I don't think the chairman, the founder slides into the chairman seat
Okay.
until like 6 to 12 months. If this is a bootstrapped founder-led business, they
Yeah.
have their fingerprints all over this thing.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time. It just is. Now, the quicker you can, separate yourself from heavy decisions, the quicker you'll see those results. But once
Okay.
you get into this chairman phase, once the business is up and systems are in place and revenue is starting to be bigger than what it was when you were there, and you're like, wow, I don't. I can think about M&A now. I can think about capital allocation. I can think about, other business. I can think about all these other things that are going to help our business in
Right.
way bigger ways instead of dealing with freaking one-on-ones, like
Right,
that's
a lot of early founders wanna be the spokespeople, right? The relationship people, they get on stage, do the podcasts,
mhm.
right? They're the
Yeah, for sure.
evangelist, creating new categories, right? We're paving new roads out there. They don't wanna be in the office, yeah, doing employee, evaluations,
Right,
times
right.
100, that kind of thing.
That's
So
exactly it, and that's where the greater value can be for them as well,
right.
right? They're spending their time on way more lucrative, initiatives and, work activities than kind of the minutia of running the business.
So you kinda describe what it looks like when it's working, meaning after a transition period, the founder is saying, I don't have to be nobody's coming to me anymore, and I don't have to be in all these meetings and all that
Yeah.
stuff I had to do, I don't have to do anymore, and I get to focus on these things, and revenue's going up, and things are getting smoother, right? All that stuff that I was making messes of, is getting better. What is a sign that, I don't know, more founder intervention or it's not working or something has to be smoothed out? What are typical things? I don't know if you get involved in any of that, when it flares up.
Yeah, well, you'll start to notice if the CEO, if the hired operator CEO is asking questions about like, what would you do in this situation? Instead of just making those calls themselves, that's a bit of a yellow flag. You know, team members are coming to the founder for their
Okay.
problems, their gripes, their pay, whatever. They're, instead of the CEO, that's a bit of a problem.
So, and
And
that's kind of a sign that it's not getting solved and they're going to solve it with the original founder as opposed to, a matter of habit, right? It's
right.
not getting dealt with.
I mean, anybody's listening can probably, if they're imagining hiring somebody else to have full control over their business, it's really emotionally challenging. And letting go of their baby, it can be way harder for people than they think. One guy I was speaking with recently, he actually lives by you. He was offered the CEO job at his company. It's a $40 million company. And he's like, they're going to give me a couple months to think about it. But I'm not sure I want to take it. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? It sounds like a great opportunity. He's like, yeah, but I think the founder is actually not going to separate himself from the business. I think the founder just wants a figurehead that he can control, a puppet that he can kind of
Uh,
direct more stuff to. And I don't think he's going to really be removed from anything at all, which I thought was like amazing, awareness. But that sort of thing you have to be very, very careful with as a founder, or even as a hired operator working for a founder, is like, how much control are they actually willing to relinquish? Because that could be an ugly ending.
yeah, and so founders should realize that if they're thinking about this, no, we're serious. The people that are gonna get the results that you want are not gonna want you messing around with their stuff and having you ask questions and stirring up underneath you. You make a decision and they go around and say, "That doesn't work," The kind of people you wanna hire won't accept that.
And this is one thing that Tiny does very, very well.
Oh, okay, right,
They
okay.
hire operators. They give them plenty of time to get comfortable, to grow the business. They get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
Tiny's philosophy is a little bit more like, this person's going to sink or swim with or without us. We're going to be very diligent with our
We
hiring.
can't really be that helpful to them. Yes, right.
Well, yeah,
That's
they're
okay.
going to have to learn hard lessons and painful lessons, and that's going to make them stronger, right? And so
Right.
and this is obviously an investor versus a founder, but you have to be very thoughtful about, what sort of relationship you want to have with your business
Okay.
after you bring
That
somebody on.
makes perfect sense. That's really interesting there. I know a couple founders that say, I wish somebody else could run my business and I could go back to being CTO and do the magic in the AI world or chief product officer because I know this freaking industry like nobody does. And I see the opportunity. I'm just really not that great at running all the day to day and hiring and financials and all that stuff. I get it, but I'll go back to where my magic is, right? My superpowers. I mean, do you see that kind of thing? Like that they hire somebody that they report to, so to speak?
I wouldn't say it's as direct of it's more of like a dotted
Okay.
line report than like a
Right.
direct report. But look, there's plenty of people who've started something, they've made a ton of cash, and they're like, this doesn't fulfill me. This does not
Yeah.
scratch my
Yeah,
itch.
that's right.
I want to
Yeah.
build products.
Yes.
And so they'll move into like
Builders build, right? That thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And in that situation, that can be tricky, but also the founder who's stepping aside knows their own limits. And so they're probably not going to get as involved. They're not going to be as emotionally involved for, different, I don't know, brand stuff or partnership stuff or hiring. They just don't
Yeah.
give a shit about that. They want to make sure the product is amazing, and like truly that's what matters to them. And I love working with those people because they like so clearly love the work
Yeah,
that
they
they
clear.
do,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
find so much, fulfillment there. But it does happen for sure.
Yeah. So, what do you see changing in the world now that AI has come in? AI and venture, AI and product. Everybody's got AI competitors, AI inside the business. Everybody's using AI. I don't know. Is your world changing? This decision about hiring somebody, did do the new people have to be AI fluent strategically and tactically? What are you seeing with the AI shift that's happening in all SaaS businesses?
I think it kind of depends on the size of your business.
Right.
If it's a, 50, $60 million business, you may not need this person to come in and be, the super contemporary with all technology, all
Yeah, yeah,
automation.
yeah.
If it's smaller, you probably do. I think what we're seeing is that AI is making this like operator and builder distinction way more stark. A lot of the
Oh, you're
tools that
right.
are out there can handle tons of grunt work, but like somebody still has to figure out what to build and why. Like the natural founders out there, these are people who are visionaries, and these people become way more valuable because AI can't necessarily think
Right.
about, a vision for a company or vision for a product. Founders who are like just really good at grinding and staying up late and like making shit happen, they're going to become a little less necessary because
Yes.
proliferation of tools. And then for like the operator themselves, like generally like operational excellence is like standard. That should be table stakes here because there's so many tools at their disposal. And AI can handle all the basics of like kind of like the internal operations of a company. I think that like the strategic thinking, organizational development, leadership development, these are what become the differentiators
All that
for.
darn people stuff and the stuff that ChatGPT can't do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. These people are AI augmented operators. They're going to use
Yeah.
the tools to help them, kind of 10x their effectiveness. So it's kind of interesting how that's playing out.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's a very useful. We got through all of the phases of that. Very useful commentary. Thanks for sharing that, Ty. What advice do you give to founders when they say, "I'm thinking about this, and how does it work," and so forth, just to get them in the right place to say this could make sense or it doesn't make sense? What advice do you give founders? And let's call them the bootstrap founders. The savvy product or industry focused ones who built something out of nothing and got it going, who see a lot of potential for their business, but want to transition their own role in it. What advice do you give for them to think about how this could go when they're beginning to think about it?
Yeah. I think they have to think about kind of the perfect ending
Yeah.
to this chapter. What is this perfect ending going to look like? If you have this magic wand and wave your magic
Yeah. Okay.
wand,
Well. Uh-huh.
what does this look like? And if that ending, has them, I don't know, ringing the bell, or if that has them shaking the hand of the PE investor, then stay doing that, right?
Okay.
The ending is unclear, or if the ending says, there may be somebody else who's ringing the bell, but I'm sitting back and I can't believe this amazing product.
Counting it. Yeah. Counting the money. Yeah.
Then that
Yeah.
that should tell you that it's, there is 100% somebody who is better at running your business than you. No question
Okay.
about it. No
Hmm.
question about it. It's just a matter of finding that person and then, being comfortable letting go of control there.
Okay. Very wise stuff, Ty. When I talked to you, I was amazed to hear this is your sole focus is helping founders bring in operators at all levels and eventually CEOs. It's a normal part of the evolution if your company keeps growing. Not everybody stays with their company through the whole process. They sell their companies, and door number 3 is don't sell it. Bring in a CEO and go create another business. That's another way to do it. So the
Exactly.
portfolio game, which a lot of founders I know love to play. So, Ty, I really appreciate you sharing your insights on the Practical Founders podcast here. How can people reach you, and what kind of conversations are useful for them to think about having with you as they're thinking about this?
Thank you. Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. No surprise.
Okay. And
Ty
can you
at,
spell your name just off the
yeah.
top of the head? We'll have the links in the show notes and so forth, but just so people know, and your website for your firm.
Yeah, it's Ty, Tighe. Gotten a lot of iterations of that over the year, as you
Mhm.
might expect. Burke, Burke. Ty at Search Partners, SRCHpartners.com is the email. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. And, I think people are wondering, or if they're curious about what their life could look like, not being bogged down by the chains of running a company, they should know that there are really wonderful, really talented people out there who want to feel the burden of those chains, who want to bear that burden and will do it better than they are. And so if there's any doubt, or if there's any suspicion kind of in the back of their brain that maybe they're not quite as fulfilled as they once were when they're building this thing from scratch and they were trying to talk to customers and they're handling customer success, like if there's any doubt that it, is not quite as fulfilling anymore, then it may be time to, explore alternative options.
Awesome. Really appreciate it, Ty. Thanks for making time. We can hear the act. You're apparently in the city there. We can hear some action around you on the streets and all that kind of thing. So it's really cool. Yeah, really appreciate you making time to share your insights.
My pleasure, Greg. Really, thank you for including me. And I really enjoyed the conversation today.
All right, great. Thanks.
All right, take care.
Thanks for watching this week's interview on the Practical Founders podcast. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe to the Practical Founders YouTube channel to keep up with my weekly in-depth interviews with serious software founders who are building valuable software companies without big funding. You can check out my blog, all the podcast episodes, and information about my Practical Founders CEO peer groups at practicalfounders.com, or message me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect. See you next week.